Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Charlotte Dennett, and we're going to have another conversation about foreign policy, this time in the Ukraine. So you have a lot to talk about, so the floor is yours.
Thanks, Cynthia. It's amazing. Leave it to Trump to blurt out what's the real end game all about in Ukraine, which is that he's trying to cut a deal with Zelensky. So, in return for all that military support, that the U.S. has a 50% interest in exploiting all the rare earth minerals in Ukraine. And what are rare earth minerals? This is something that people have to get more familiarized with. I'm going to take this from a Reuters article. They are a group of 17 metals used to make magnets turn power into motion. For what? Electrical vehicles, cell phones, missile systems, and electricity. So in the new age where we're going to be converting like to electrical vehicles, um, these rare earth minerals are going to be exceedingly valuable. And in a way, I'm sorry to say, the great game is going to be on a new plane for the whole 20th century and earlier 20th, 21st century. Um, it was oil and natural gas, and it still is. And they are still the most coveted resource because they continue up to now to be oil is the main fuel of the military, and U.S. military is the largest consumer of oil. But once we're getting into electric power, it's going to turn to lithium. So, in a way, it's going to be a more sad wars over resources, I'm afraid. But I mean, the main thing was he just blew it open that this war is probably had a lot to do with getting access to strategic minerals and resources. And the media has picked it up right away. I just saw this morning, I think it was MSNBC that interviewed a soldier. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this war? It may actually be for natural resources. And the guy says, this is a soldier. He says, well, I've got to choose between the lesser of two evils as to who's going to run the show in Ukraine. And he said, I would prefer the Americans over the Russians. So that's how he looks at it. But the powers that be know that the mothers of those soldiers do not want to think that they were out there risking their lives to support the profits of energy companies. It's the whole reason why they have to create pretexts for their wars. They're always lying. They're always about getting strategic materials. It's just, and leave it to Trump to blow it up, open it up. I mean, and not surprisingly, one of the reporters immediately picked up what he had said about Syria. Do you remember what he said about Syria? There was a when he first came in, I think it was, he was talking about removing troops from Syria because, he doesn't want American troops involved. He's anti war, supposedly. But then he had to reconsider because he was reminded that the reasons that the troops were in eastern Syria was to protect, and this is what he said, our oil. That's what he said, our oil, which caused a whole furor in the international community because, first of all, he called it our oil. It's Syrian oil, it's not our oil. And second of all, that he was talking about the reason why troops are stationed in that region to protect the oil. And they're still there. He reversed his decision. Oh, I think I'll send him back. He's always making outlandish comments and then reversing reversing them when someone sort of slaps him in the face and says, "Look, wake up. This is problematic what you're saying here." And so then he reverses it. And as long as he's Mr. Transactional President, and he's got a lot of power behind him, and a Supreme Court who's not going to hold him accountable for any crimes that he commits, he's going to keep doing it. It's sort of a game for him, I think. I don't think the man hardly ever gets embarrassed, at least not in public, for some of the outlandish comments he makes, but also in some of the true comments he makes. Because, the American people have been denied this information for a century, really, about all these wars, primarily in the Middle East, because that's where most of the oil is, but all over the world. So that's why I had to have a say about this right off the bat. And I wrote a piece way back in right after the invasion. I called "The War in Ukraine Could Be the Mother of All Energy Wars," but the media still misses the context. The other aspect that's not told, they talk about the rare minerals in Ukraine, but they still don't talk about the oil. And the fact of the matter is that Ukraine has the largest reserves of oil and natural gas, the second largest in all of Europe, if you count Russia as being part of Europe. They have the most. Ukraine is the second most. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and the vast majority of the valuable deposits are in the eastern region, in the Donbass region, where all the fighting is taking place. Also, I just wanted to show you this picture to remind viewers that of a map. This is a map. I'm sorry, but it shows these are all pipelines, and they're all crisscrossing Ukraine. And it used to be under the Soviet Union, they were all built by the Russians, and they're still functioning. But now Russia has curtailed some of the transport of natural gas and oil through these pipelines because of the Ukraine war. And of course, you know what Biden did right after the invasion is that he said that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that was going to supply natural gas to from Russia to Germany and was going to go online the summer of 2022. He said that must not happen. He said it must not happen. And he convinced the Germans to forget closing the line. And then later it was sabotage. Ostensibly, the latest I heard was by some Ukrainian faction. But that's what this war is all about. And as I have said in many other interviews, including with you, and with Scott Ritter, I might add, who agreed with me. I think this is one thing he agrees with me, that these energy wars are what it's mostly all about. Anyway, yeah, that's the wars in the Middle East are all about oil and pipelines and Gaza. So, I wait for your question. And by the way, we have to say my book again in case people don't know it.
Okay.
The book is Follow the Pipelines, Uncovering the Mystery of a Lost Spy, and that would be my father, and the Deadly Politics of the Great Game for Oil. So the reason that I have such a personal connection to this story is because my father was America's first master spy in the Middle East, and his job was to determine the route of the Trans-Arabian pipeline that was going to ship all his valuable Saudi oil uh, to a terminal point on the eastern Mediterranean, which was going to either be, guess what, Lebanon or Palestine. So that was in a previous program, several with you, Christine. I mean, Cindy. But the Ukraine story is directly related. Israel has huge natural gas and oil deposits that were discovered off the coast in the Eastern Mediterranean, and now worth $500 billion. And the whole plan, concocted under the Biden administration and with Israel and the European Union, is to transport that oil and natural gas to Europe, which is desperate for new energy sources. But
Mm-hmm.
the problem is you can't develop a pipeline route in a territory where there's constant conflict. So the idea is wipe them out. That's what they did. They wiped out Gaza. That's you. The Israelis did, and they hurt Lebanon and they invaded Lebanon. And of course, there's the port explosion in Lebanon, which everyone suspects who was behind that, but they haven't proven it yet. And Syria was weakened, and now you've got a Syrian rebel leader who is willing to do business on the oil and natural gas issue. You see, that's what it's turning out to be. And meanwhile, what happens to the Palestinians? Are they going to be forcibly removed, or are they going to have a state of their own? And that's still up for grabs. But the other thing I wanted to mention, I can't remember if I did in our last interview, but this guy named Amos Hochstein, who I discovered was largely responsible for some of the ceasefire deals that were going on regarding Gaza and Lebanon. He has a background in Ukraine. Okay, he was
Wow.
deeply involved with Naftogaz, which was. Wait a minute, I have to get that straight. I'll tell you that in a minute because I don't want to get it wrong, but Hochschild was involved in all these discussions about how to exploit Ukraine's energy, and they've been looking at this since I don't know, at least the year 2000. I have this incredible article here called, and people, you should really look it up. Look it up online. Ukraine and the Caspian Sea. And the
Okay.
whole story behind this is that the Caspian Sea, which is sort of right in the middle of this whole area of energy conflicts, look at your maps. And it's rich in oil and natural gas. And the powers that be are trying to figure out how to exploit it. Russia wants to exploit some of it and has. The West wants to run pipelines that avoid the Russians. And there was big talk about running a pipeline from the Caspian Sea that would end up going through Ukraine. That never happened, but it doesn't mean that they're still not discussing it. I mean, it's wide open for that. So anyway, that's the situation. If I can find here's my thing on Hochstein. He
I've got a
was oh,
I've got um
you got to go.
no, I've got a question.
Oh, okay.
Do you do you see a peaceful solution to the Ukraine situation anytime soon?
Well, Zelensky's under a lot of pressure right now.
Right?
He's under huge pressure. I mean, from Trump, and Trump's doing is typically insulting him. And now Zelensky back in February, according to a Reuters report, was amenable to this deal. Okay, that in return for military supplies, Ukraine would give the U.S. 50% interest in the minerals, and there was also discussion of other foreign partners because I can't help but think that maybe the Russians might be involved in this because Trump is close to Vladimir Putin, and I don't think Putin would look too kindly on America having an exclusive rights to these minerals. So the great game is going to continue. The Chinese are in there. I mean, this is it. They're all competing against each other.
For min
And yeah,
for minerals.
yeah. Well, for minerals and oil. That's what it's all
Okay.
about. I mean, this is capitalism on steroids, late
But,
capitalism.
but
And
you never, if you turn on the TV, you never hear anything about minerals at all.
no, no, and Trump blew it open.
Oh,
I know,
okay.
you know, everybody else is keeping it quiet, and then he blurts it out. And I don't know if he knows that he's going to get himself in a heap of trouble. I think he doesn't care. I mean, he says terrible things as well, like we're going to own Gaza. He had the whole world horrified over that one.
Mhm.
But I don't know whether it's stupidity and partly intelligence and scheming.
I don't think he's a stupid person.
No, no, he's a scheming guy. He's scheming like a criminal. That's what he is. I mean, he learned a lot from Cohen, his mafia advisor, so he acts accordingly. And bludgeon, bludgeon, don't give up, don't give in. And sometimes he
Right.
gets his way. So is there going to be peace? Well, first of all, the U.S. has to get something out of it, and the U.S. companies, right? So they may actually support this thing, and Zelensky may go along with it. My whole question is, what do the Russians get out of this? The Russians may be given part of that whole eastern Donbass region where most of the oil and natural gas is. Or they may not get all of it, but they may get a good chunk. And maybe there's this, the Russians will get this and the Americans will get that. And meanwhile, I don't know how many deaths there have been. I think there's hundreds of thousands of deaths. Is that not so? Did I mean, it's horrible. It's just when is this pillage going to end? And in my
Oh,
view, the only
right.
time it's going to end is when enough people become aware. Oops, sorry. Enough people become aware of what it's all about. That's really it. It's sad.
And you don't think people in this country right now are aware?
No, no, most people are not. The people look, people in Congress, they got to know. I suspect a lot of people in the media have to know about this, and they know they can't write about it. It's like national security. They won't do it. They won't risk doing it. So I just wanted to say a few more things about Amos Hochstein.
Okay.
He's a long-term diplomat and energy security specialist. He worked to mediate an energy conflict between Israel and Hezbollah under the Obama administration. And then he worked out that ceasefire. But also, he has a background in Ukraine as well. He's tied up with Ukrainian um, natural gas, and I think that is Naftogaz. But of course, I don't have the I don't have the document right in front of me. Trust me, they all know about it. I mean, Biden was on the board of Burisma. Well, what is Burisma? It's Ukraine's largest natural gas company, and it was planning to do a lot of investment in eastern Ukraine. And guess who encouraged that? Joe Biden did. Now you wonder, now you wonder why Biden pardoned his son so that there would not be any further investigations because the investigations they sort of touched on it when this was during Trump's first impeachment when he was trying to get Zelensky to turn over dirt on Biden. That's what and he was not going to send military weapons until he did so, and Zelensky resisted that. So there's this friction even going back then between him and Zelensky. But yeah, so that it's because they all know about it on both sides. It's a great game. And Ukraine, this country that is so rich in natural resources, is caught right in the middle of it. It has, here, how about this? Ukraine has 22 of the 34 minerals that are part of the critical rare earth minerals. So that says a lot. Yeah, I have here that since February 7th, Zelensky suggested a victory plan. And what did that involve? It involved giving foreign partners, not identified, I got to check into that, joint access to Ukraine's strategically valuable resources. By the way, oil and natural gas not mentioned, but it's there. You can dig and you can find it.
Okay.
So is his victory plan going to bring peace? Well, it might, but only if it satisfies both the US and the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
it.
Okay. All right. So, we'll see if that happens, right?
Yeah, follow it. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, follow the maps and follow the pipelines if you really want to know what's going on. It's,
Okay. Charlotte, I had a rough day yesterday. I have a rough day today. So I'm going to say thank you for being on Issues That Matter. You've been listening to Charlotte Dennett. I'm Cynthia Pooler. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Charlotte, we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
okay, Cynthia.